Thank you so much if you're watching this video. The last video we went over cloud concepts, which was so much fun. This one is going to be even more fun where we're going over networking device monitoring. I'm going to cover a few things: hardware device monitoring, network monitoring, applications monitoring, interface status, monitoring environmental variables. So to ensure the availability and reliability of network equipment, an essential duty for a network engineer is usually to implement monitoring and logging application on a designated networking equipment, right? So these applications can actually log the performance of the equipment to determine if the applications are performing optimally and determining a baseline of the performance. Now, hardware equipment, for example, like switches and routers, natively comes with a logging mechanism that can be enabled for troubleshooting purposes. Now, similar to the hardware equipment server, OSs, right, have native applications that can monitor the network's performance by capturing log files. So these these loaded pretty quick. So we're going to go over a few things like, for instance, like hardware device monitoring, and they need to be monitored to again make sure they're functioning optimally. Different types of metrics need to be monitored, including the temperature, the central processing unit or CPU, and memory utilization. Right, and monitoring the different metrics can ensure that the network will function optimally. Then you have hardware device monitoring, different types of metrics, right? Typically, for networking, hardware devices need to be monitored continuously to ensure the device is functioning correctly. As I mentioned, temperature, CPU, memory, then you have the network metrics monitoring, right? Which is bandwidth, latency. Bandwidth is the availability of the network resources. That's depending on the amount of bandwidth of the network. Then you have latency, which can affect the accessibility and functionality of network resources and are normally caused by the overutilization of network bandwidth, which means there's too much going on. You also have jitter, which you don't hear too much about. Similar to latency is jitter in the network that's caused by overutilization of the network bandwidth, right? And then you also have your network monitoring applications, which I mentioned, used to monitor network traffic. And you have a few that I've used in other videos. Monitor network traffic and bandwidth utilization to ensure the availability of resources on the network. And these also can be used to set up to create log files of events that occurred on the network. Now, what I'm going to do first is go over implementing Simple Network Management Protocol, or SNMP. I'm going to use an application to gather certain metrics of network devices connected to the network. And these metrics include like the flow of traffic and the utilization of devices. So just going to add some rows of features here. I'm just going to hit next. Um, here, here, we're good. And let's actually, that's not this one here. Um, Look at that one. We're going to add these features naturally. Right. And then we're going to do install. We don't need to restart. So I'm going to install. There it is. All right, perfect. All right. So now that we've got the install succeeded, right, it needs to be configured to capture the activity of network device on the network. So usually a third-party application can be implemented to capture and analyze network activity. So we can actually take a look at network device log reviews. So network devices can usually be set up to capture events that have occurred on a specific device. Right. So these events are saved on a device as log files that can be reviewed and used for troubleshooting or for auditing purposes, like traffic logs, audit logs, log level. You can take a look at log level severity, right? Like critical error warnings, information, or verbals, which displays more information of events that have occurred. It can be used for troubleshooting. But what we're going to do is take a look at reviewing some system log files. Now, Windows OS has logged the events that have occurred on the system on a native implemented application. Now, sysadmin can use these log files to troubleshoot specific events that occurred on the system. And what we're going to do is actually use the event viewer here, um, which is an application on the typically a Windows device that will be used to review events that occurred. Right. So I'm going to expand the window logs here. All right, so we can see them. All right, I'm going to security, take a look at what's going on there. Now, the event viewer, just as a heads up, it collects different log files of events that have occurred on the system, as I mentioned. And these logs can be reviewed and used for auditing and troubleshooting, as I also mentioned. Now, the security tab contains information on successful and failed login attempts of user accounts on the system. Now we can talk a little bit about monitoring interface status, right? Now to ensure the availability of the networking devices and troubleshooting connection problem, it's essential to be able to determine the status and statistics of the interface network devices that they are connected to, because the network devices are connected to each other through switches and routers, right? We can talk about the network interface status, the interface link state, interface speed, interface traffic monitoring, which we kind of went over in other videos, cyclical redundancy check, protocol packets and byte counts, interface errors and alerts, CRC errors, giant runts, encapsulation errors, and so on and so forth. And then we also have we can monitor environmental variables, right? That which can affect the performance and availability of network resources on the network. And these variables include temperatures, I mentioned before, humidity, and the available power. Which why in my last video when I went over the cloud concepts, why it's important when data centers are set up for cloud services, the availability and the availability zones are very important as far as picking a prime spot for these for mitigating factors, right, such as environmental variables. And these modern network devices are either located in a private data center or hosted data center, which needs to be monitored and control these variables constantly to ensure the availability of the network. You have temperature, humidity, electrical, flooding, baselines, net flow data, uptime, and downtime as well. But that brings us at least to the end of this video now. We're going to get into network device monitoring a little bit more in depth on another video, but this is how much I wanted to get into it on this one. And just for a brief recap, went over hardware device monitoring, networking, monitoring applications, monitoring interface status, and also monitoring environmental variables, implementing simple network management protocol, reviewing system log files, and things of that nature. This is a quick one, quick hitter. Don't mind these at all. That's all part of the fundamental sense of networking. But nonetheless, love doing this. And we're going to be doing our next one, which is going to be our network hardening techniques and our best practices. That one is going to most certainly be a fun one. It's going to be fairly fairly quick video on that one as well. But nonetheless, I'll see you there. If you stay curious, stay secure.